glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. Come inside, the show's about to start.
Altså, man kan jo ikke lade være med at tænke, også måske inspireret af de analyser, der har været af de bevægelser, som har fulgt Trump. Altså, man kan jo ikke lade være med at tænke, at der ligesom er en skillelinje mellem dem, som kan fungere godt i det eksisterende system, og dem, der ikke fungerer godt i det eksisterende system, ikke?
Godmorgen, her er vejret fra San Miguel. Ja, så dere ser, så er det skyer, men det skal være skyfritt i dag. Det skal være sol, og temperaturen kommer kanskje opp mot 23 grader, sånn som i går, men det er jo ikke meldt mer enn 18-19 da. Ellers så kommer det være en god del vind utover ettermiddagen, og den vil komme fra nordøst. I går sa jeg feil. Jeg sa sørøst i går, men jeg mente nordøst, og det samme i dag. Ja, siden vi får se sola får vi å se når sola bikker over på solnedgangen, og det er sånn cirka 23-20 i dag. Ja, ellers er det jo stilt og roligt. Ikke noe støy og stress og sånne ting, Så her nede har vi det bra. Ha en riktig god dag, så snakkes vi i morgen. Ja, det er jo mandag i dag, det glemte jeg å si. Hei, hei.
Warning. 3, 2, 1.
Og takk for den nyttige informasjonen, Ove. Det er godt å vite at det er mandag, så slipper vi å handle mer øl på bensinstasjoner. Det måtte vi gjøre i går. Jeg hadde faktisk glemt å kjøpe øl på Nokkøl på Cash Fresh. Så skal han der til en tur i dag. Så hvis humøret blir litt bedre enn hva det er nå, så kommer jeg gjerne til å filme det. Lage en sånn kjørevideo. Ja, det som ødelegger humøret, det er jo det at det tankskipet, eller det containerskipet snart er løst. Så nå kan jeg begynne oljetransporten igjen. Så blir det vanlige oljepriser. Ellers har det vært iskaldt hele våren, som du sier, er det kaldt i San Miguel også, og her er det skyer, og jeg er så trøtt og lei av det at jeg har ikke sjekket hva det skal bli i dag. Har en koronafri dag i alle fall. Det er det viktigste. Hold avstand, vask hender. Og så gidder jeg ikke ta med den andre grafikken, for den er det vel ingen som liker uansett. Ha en koronafri dag.
At this point, more than 30 million Americans have been confirmed to be infected with COVID-19 at some point in this pandemic. Out of them, nearly 550,000 have now died. Meaning, if you pick 10 random adults in this country, at least one of them has contracted this coronavirus in the last year and survived. Well, increasingly, we found that for many of these nearly 30 million Americans, surviving COVID does not mean you're done with COVID. We've heard about shortness of breath, heart problems continuing on, but it goes beyond that. If you've recovered, but you feel like your brain still isn't 100%, that's not just you. Diana Barrett actually contracted COVID early on in the pandemic. She's seen the effects linger in many ways, so much so that she founded a group called Survivor Corps. Diana, how common is this now that you're hearing from so many people?
Long-term COVID can present in 3 different buckets, I would say. There are the people who get sick on day 1, and they are chronically sick every day thereafter. So these are people who are on day 300 of having a fever and having extreme chronic symptoms. Then there's a second bucket. That was my group, where I actually got out of isolation. I felt pretty good. I went in and I was donating plasma and I felt really okay. And then I had a full symptomatic relapse over the summer and all the symptoms came back. I ended up going through the post-COVID care center at Mount Sinai. And I went to a neurologist, I went to ENT, and I ended up being diagnosed with post-COVID glaucoma. And also, I ended up in the hospital just last month for the first time, actually, with a lesion in my cheek muscle that doesn't look like any lesion any doctor has seen before. So another medical mystery.
And this was not stuff that you saw early on. This is like just this ever-growing spiral of symptoms.
Absolutely. And I would give the third bucket of people are the people who think that they are recovered. So it's not a free ride just because you didn't have symptoms in the beginning or you just had a scratchy throat. We're seeing real, serious long-term COVID complications with those people as well.
The last time I felt like myself was before I was diagnosed with COVID.
I would get very dizzy and lightheaded when I would, any movement, sitting down, standing up.
For the last couple of months, I've been dealing with really bad asthma.
My heart rate is so high and I can't move from the couch and I can't breathe.
These are people who, one shower wipes them out for the day.
We kind of call it the Corona coaster because one day could be okay and the next day I'm on the floor having convulsions thinking I'm having a heart attack. My son is 12 years old. He had a very average case of COVID last year for an 11-year-old. And I never would have called him a long haul kid. Right. And it was not until 9 months later that one of his front adult teeth fell out spontaneously with no blood loss from vascular damage to his jaw.
Wow.
So it can act like a ticking time bomb in your body. So not only are we seeing neurological issues, we are seeing actual brain damage as well.
Well, and so let's talk about the brain, because what's so interesting that a lot of people see this as a respiratory disease, right? It affects your lungs, it affects maybe your heart. And yet just this week, there's this new study from Northwestern showing out of 100 patients who continue to experience these, long haul symptoms, like 85% of them say they include neurological symptoms, like the brain.
Absolutely. And, as shocking as that study was, I wasn't surprised by it in the slightest. I've been saying for months that we started off thinking of COVID as a respiratory disease. We then understood it to be also a vascular and inflammatory disease. So I think that we will look back on COVID is in large part as a neurological disease. And I think that one of the lesser one of the parts of acute COVID that people have really not focused on is the encephalitis part of it. And so when we're talking about...
What is that?
So it's inflammation of the brain.
Symptoms like confusion, disorientation, or lack of alertness aren't common in COVID-19, and they raise the possibility of brain involvement. Now, necrotizing encephalitis, which can be caused by other viruses like influenza and even chickenpox, is one of the conditions that doctors consider.
I think that what's really important is to look at these symptoms from a patient's perspective. So not just looking at what are the most often reported symptoms, but what are the things that are causing people the most distress? What are keeping them from going back to work? Inability to concentrate, fatigue, memory problems, and extreme personality change, all neurological.
The headaches are so extreme that I'm taking migraine medicine and sleeping for, 14 to 16 hours a day.
I had a very average case of COVID. I didn't have, I wasn't hospitalized. I had what you call the, Tylenol and Gatorade variety of COVID. Right. My vision, even though my vision comes out fine on an eye chart, I'm telling you, I can't see as well. And everybody is saying the same thing. I had full-on hallucinations when I had COVID. And some people continue to have those. We're seeing people, including children, having psychiatric breaks.
Just this week, Texas Roadhouse founder and CEO Kent Taylor died by suicide. His family saying the 65-year-old took his own life after symptoms like severe tinnitus stemming from his battle with COVID-19 became unbearable.
And it's really important to really understand that when you're dealing with a brain injury or encephalitis, there are post-viral neurological issues that need to be looked at medically.
Yeah, wait, so is there a point at which, you hear something from somebody, a family, friend, whatever, and you go, that could be COVID. That's worth getting checked out. Or do people get, discouraged sometimes seeking medical help because no one knows everything about this disease?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the latter.
You can't predict what symptoms any particular individual is going to have. And some people are dealing with headaches, sleep problems. So it's not something to just toss off, I can deal with not smelling for a while.
I went for a follow-up appointment on this abscess in my cheek last week to, the head of ENT at Mount Sinai. And he looked at me at the end and said, you really need to find a COVID expert. And then he paused for a beat and we both looked at each other and started bursting into laughter because it was just, Of course, there's no such thing. Right. I would say that's one of the reasons why Survivor Corps has become so incredibly valuable to the scientific and medical community because, it's really the living proof of the old saying of when you need an expert, find a patient.
All right, Diana Barron went ahead and founded Survivor Corps, looking to at least link people up with their shared experiences and point them in the right direction to a number of different researchers looking at all the different ways COVID continues to affect Americans. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you so much for having me on.